Hey, how's it going? It's Lawrence from the Performance Ranch, and today we are going to discuss a nightly routine that you can do before you go to bed. This is something I try to do pretty much every night. It's a part of my sleep hygiene schedule. The way we put it integrated is I actually integrate it with mindfulness, with some meditation work. It takes about 10 to 12 minutes or so. Very quick and easy, but it makes you feel good, makes you feel loosened up, lay in bed, and it's just easier to fall asleep when you don't have those restrictions or those tightnesses. So stay tuned, we're gonna go through it now. So with this nightly routine, we're looking at what's going on throughout the day, right? Throughout the day, most of us are having to sit down, whether it's driving, at work, or just being a human being. We're usually having to sit a lot. Typically, we get really tight in our hip flexors. Another big chronic area, which we talked about in our morning routine, was ankles and calves. So we're gonna really work on that as well. Another big tightness area that we get just as being our daily activities, lats, sometimes our forearms, especially if we're on our phone or typing a lot, elbows, and even our biceps and our shoulders. All that stuff gets really tight because we're usually into this kind of position in the daytime, so we're gonna work on opening up. So first thing I like to start off with, again, like I said, I put on my headphones usually, I put on the Calm app, I go through a 10-minute meditation just to kind of wind down, work on my breathing. That's really what I'm trying to do, is relax as much as I can before I actually get into bed, because the more relaxed you are, the easier it is to fall asleep. So the first thing I start off with is a child's pose. So just as a lot of these are gonna be yoga principles, but we're gonna get into that child's pose. I like to start off with my knees a little wider than my shoulders, just so I can kind of sit my hips back into my feet. Again, I'm trying to stretch out my ankles as well. Then I'm also extending my arms out really long, trying to get my back stretched out, and I'm working on my lats as well. So I'm gonna feel a stretch through here, I'm gonna feel a stretch in my low back. And as I reach out, I'm actually trying to tuck my tailbone under me. And then once I get down here, I hold this for about 30 seconds or so. After a little bit of time, after those 30 seconds, I'll actually rotate my palms up to the ceiling, because now what I'm really trying to work on is getting my lat to stretch. The lat is an internal rotator, meaning it wants to turn your hand in. So we're gonna rotate against it. And then I'm actually even gonna lean into that side to get a little more stretch on that lat. And then I'll even do that to the other side. So I'm kind of moving back and forth. So not only am I feeling this in my shoulders, in my lats, feeling this in my hips, hip flexors, but a lot of good stretch in those lats, even a little bit in the forearms. Again, if you try this at home and you can't get your hands all the way out, that's okay. Sometimes what I'll do is, just to single it out, I'll pull one hand across my body and really force it down and lean into it a little bit more. I'll kind of show you this from the front view. So from here, I'll take that hand across, palm up, I'm gonna drop back into my hips. So now I get a big stretch across that lat. Like I said before we started, biggest areas we're trying to stretch out: thoracic spine, lats, hip flexors, calves. After I go through that little series, it takes about 30 seconds to 60 seconds or so. The next big one I like to do is go from the child's pose right into the mountain climber stretch here. So this is gonna be, put one leg out in front. I'm actually dropping my back leg back. So I'm working on my hip flexor, working on those hamstrings, working on the groin. My hands are pushed through the floor. I'm just holding this position. So we call this the kneeling hip flexor. Sorry, kneeling mountain climber. And I'll hold that for about 10 to 20 seconds or so, but now I'm actually gonna add rotation by pushing my hip forward and opening my chest and my shoulders, my thoracic spine. I'm gonna reach. So I'm also getting shoulders, thoracic, hip flexor in that bottom leg, groin in that front leg, and then I switch. So you'll see a better side now. Again, the leg is back behind me, other leg's in front of me. My palms are trying to push flat into the floor. Not only am I engaging through the floor by pushing my hands in, I'm gonna use that as a pivot point as I push through my hand and I open my shoulders up and I rotate all the way around. Come back down. Do that about 2 or 3 times per side. Again, just trying to work on that hip flexor, thoracic, shoulder. And then same thing every time. Again, usually I have my headphones on. I'm taking real deep breaths and I'm doing this through my nose. I'm trying to do a lot of nasal breathing here. So in and out through the nose. And then go from there, right into a little downward dog stretch. So I like to go from here right into down dog. So I get my hips up in the air. Again, I like to do this with my knees bent because I don't have that range of motion if I lock out my legs and my back bent. So I'll get my knees bent, I'll push my tailbone up to the sky, and I'm trying to push my heels to the ground as I do this. Like I said, another big chronic area we get tight is in our calves, our ankles. So I'm really trying to loosen all that up. I was kind of pump back and forth through each foot, get nice big stretches. And then I like to walk out, go right into a little plank position, and then I'll do a press up. So as I do this, I'm working on my thoracic here. I'm actually stretching out the whole front side of my abdominals, and I'll even lean into the side. So now as I lean and rotate, I'm really working on this one hip flexor. It's the left side here. So I'm supporting myself on this left hand. My left knee just kind of dragging along behind me. Then I'll switch to the other side. So some easy ways to get hip flexor, shoulders, thoracic, right back down. Again, I'll go right back into that downward dog again. Spend some time loosening up. Now you can see things become a little more pliable, a little easier to do. Again, these are all active stretching. I'm not really holding very long stretches. I'm just trying to loosen up as much as I can. Then one more time, back into that cobra pose. And then right back down. Then, after that, I stay on all fours. I'm gonna go into a thoracic rotation exercise. And the way I like to do this, I like to tuck my pelvis under me. The cue I give a lot is think of a scared dog with its tail tucked. So now my tail's tucked under me. My palm's gonna go up behind my hand, behind my low back. My opposite hand's gonna be pushed through the floor right in the center. And I'm just taking a deep breath and I'm gonna rotate my shoulder and my elbow and my head as I force my left hand through the ground. So I'm using that left hand through the ground as the anchor point, and I'm rotating. And as you can see, I've tucked my pelvis and I've dropped my hips back. And the main reason for that is so you don't rotate through your lumbar, you're rotating all thoracic spine here, your upper back. About 3 reps. I'll switch, same thing. Sometimes I get some popping to go on, sometimes I don't, just depends on how tight it is. But the goal would be shoulder, I'll show you from the front view. The goal would be shoulders squared up, and as you rotate, you're actually rotating all the way across. So you're getting a complete perpendicular position to the floor with that thoracic spine in your shoulders. All right, so that's another little series there. The next thing we go right into is a pigeon stretch. So I'll go from all fours right into the pigeon. I'll pull my leg up in front of me. Okay, my shin is almost parallel with the top of the mat, and I'm dropping my back leg back. Again, I got pretty tight outer hips here, so I'm not gonna really go down too low. If you can kind of work your way down. So those forearms. And again, I'm not gonna hold this one too long, about 20 to 30 seconds. I come back up, and I just try to switch sides. So it's the same thing. And as you see, I get there and actually use my foot to drag me back. So I'm pulling my hips back in this direction, anchoring my knee, anchoring my foot, holding that position. Taking nice deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the nose. And then just let it sink in. This left side for me is significantly tighter than my right. So again, trying to reset through that position. The final thing I like to go into is really working on hip flexors. After that pigeon stretch, because I've now worked on my outer hips, I'm gonna work on this 90-90 position. So this is a position I like to do a lot, where again, using a mat is the easiest way to know where you're at in space. My foot is lined up with the edge of the mat, as is my knee, my shin, and my back leg. So this is this 90-90 position. So 90 at the front leg, at the hip, at the back leg. I'm gonna get nice and tall. I'm trying to push myself up. Really working on this position here. And now I'm gonna add a little bit more extension through that back hip by thinking of the hinge position, if you've seen us do the hinge video, I'm actually trying to push my tailbone back as I reach my head and shoulders forward over my front shin. Again, you can't see, but I'm anchoring myself with this outside hand because this for me is pretty tight. For most of us, it's gonna be a tight position. And then I'm gonna rotate back to the side. And the way I do that, I anchor my heels to the ground and I just rotate through my hips. So when I get back, just the same position, I'll adjust myself again. This side's a little easier for me. Like I said earlier in that pigeon stretch, that my left hip is significantly tighter. My right side, I can actually hold up a little bit more without hands. Long spine, long neck. And then I'm gonna push my chest and head forward. And again, these are more active type stretches. I'm only doing about 3 to 5 second holds on each one. Do about 3 reps each side. So again, this is that 90-90 position. And then after I go 90-90, I'll go into what's called a Pretzel. So all I do is close this off and pull my foot to my knee, and I bring this leg back. So now I can sit up in this position. It's a little easier to sit. And as I do this, I'm gonna show you, so I'm gonna square up my front thigh to the top end of this mat. My hand is also even with my hip. I'm gonna take this opposite hand all the way over. So now my hands are even, and my shoulders ideally are also squared up to my top leg, my top of my thigh here, as well as to the mat. And then I tuck my hand underneath, my outside hand. So I'm gonna anchor this left hand down as I try to push away from my right hand. So now I'm stretching my QL, the outside of my hips, my TFL, which is another outside of the hip muscle, nice and tall. Then I'll do the same thing. I'll just rotate all the way over. And it's the same exact thing on the opposite side. Coming through, anchor my hand, and I'm trying to use this anchor to pull my body away. Now I'm gonna show this from the front view now. So again, my thigh lined up with the top of the mat, hand in front, rotating all the way across. Tuck my hand underneath, and now I'm anchoring. Again, my elbows stay straight. So one big goal I'm really trying to work on is keep those elbows extended and then reach. A lot of times I see people do this and those kind of fall through. So that's not the goal. The goal is not to flop on the ground. The goal is to stay strong and anchor and pull away from that position. So now all this stretches through my QL, my TFL, which is on the outside of the hip here, even in my shoulders. And I'll show you how I rotate. Pretty much staying right in place. And the same thing, anchor and pull away. Then the final one after this is we go right into some hip flexors and ankle mobility. So you can kind of do this all at the same time. So knees, I'm gonna start from my knee, step in front of me. The goal is to here, get this abdominal wall to kind of push forward. And the way I do that, I tuck my pelvis under me. So if you can see that from the side, right? Most people want to be kind of here into their lumbar spine. I'm gonna tuck my pelvis, flatten out my low back, use my glute. I'm trying to get a nice, good stretch to this hip flexor on this side. And as you can see me from the front, as I do this, my hips are completely level. A lot of times you'll see people, especially if you're really tight in this hip, you may catch yourself kind of riding up. In order to compensate for that, you need to push this hip down and bring yourself across. Now you get a big stretch of that front. And then as I do this, I'll show you from the side, I add in some ankle mobility by just pushing my knee forward while holding onto this front heel there. Come back, and again, so I'm getting hip flexor and I'm getting ankle at the same time. So a good bang for the buck exercise where you get opposing ankle stretch as well as hip flexor. About 3 to 5 reps, switch sides. Again, tuck the pelvis, kind of push forward. I feel a really big stretch to that front. And I can even use my elbow here, my hand and other hand to anchor and push. And the goal is to, as you push forward, your knee needs to track over the toes. Because you don't want to see is this, because now I'm losing my stability from my foot. I'm trying to create that arch, drive my knee, big stretch to the ankle, as well as my hip flexor. And if you just want hip flexor, just tuck the pelvis and hold. And then after that, the next thing it is just climb into bed, try to relax, really try to breathe, get the whole body to settle into what you just did. You just kind of created a lot of new range. Sometimes if I stretch a little too much, I'll even add a little bridge position to it, just to kind of turn some stuff on before I go into bed. I'll lay down my back, keep my feet anchored, and I'm just gonna tuck my pelvis under me, just like we did with that hip flexor stretch, and just drive my hips, squeeze my glutes there. Kind of do this about 3 to 5 reps. Nice and slow, just to kind of turn on what the glutes, which is one of our main powerhouses here, just to be a little more active. And then the goal is, again, just to relax, get in bed, and settle into what you need to do. So hopefully that helps. Again, it's usually a little 10 to 12 minutes or so. You just take the time that you need. Ideally, you find those spots that you know that are tight. So if you know your ankles are tight, I know for me, that is my main area, is my ankles. My ankles are very, very tight, so I have to work on that a lot. Another for me is my hips. Give you an example, like I could never sit like this. When I was in high school, even in my 20s, 30s, I'm 42 right now, this position was one of the hardest positions for me to ever sit in. So as I do this more and more over the last couple years, I can really feel my body open up and just be able to be a little more relaxed when I'm into these types of positions. But hopefully this helps. Comment below, subscribe. Thank you for joining us today.